Okay, thank you, Saulius. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Christian Kleiner. I'm Data Acquisition Manager at HERE, and we are dealing a lot with Inspire data, open data. And so this is why I want you to show what kind of Inspire data we are using for our maps and also for our navigation, and also which challenges we are having, building the map, and then also using open data and Inspire data. So why does it not work? I cannot go. Now it goes. Can you see my full screen, because I just see a little bit?
Yes, your screen is well presented.
Okay, so that's the resolution of my screen. So sorry for this. So maybe most of you know our company here. So we are building maps and also location or applications for locations or dealing with location, mostly for car navigation, but also we are going or expanding to other domains like retail, location advertising, and so on. And for this, we are collecting a lot of data from all kind of different sources. So as you can see here in this slide, we have our own collection cars, more than 400 cars driving around the globe every day, nearly every day, or not every day, and collecting LiDAR data, 360-degree camera data. We are using probe points or floating car data coming from users of our applications or from third parties where we are buying this. We are getting sensor data from cars, and we also have our own expert communities and developer community where users can make edits directly to our map. There's also 5 billion records per month, as you can see here, and which is really important for us. We have really local expertise in all countries. So we have in 50 different countries local teams sitting who are dealing with map, looking for third-party data. And yeah, so coming to really third-party data, we have more than 80,000 sources and suppliers which are giving, or where we are buying data or getting, for example, also open data. So let's go to these data. So these sources are really high important for us. So as I said, we have more than 80,000 sources registered and which we, so these are 80,000 accounts which we really need to manage. So we are buying imagery data. We have our contacts to governmental organizations, where we are sometimes getting information about planned road constructions. We are buying a lot of data, third-party data, like, for example, point of interest or address data. As I mentioned before, we have our own collection cars, which we are calling HERE True. We using postal data, where we can get updates about, for example, new road names. We're having our own call centers, and as I said, probe data coming from telecom services. So it's really a huge number of data we need to orchestrate and trying to build a picture of the real world out of it. And then which also is important, it needs to be really fresh and accurate, because our users are expecting really nearly real-time up-to-date data or up-to-date map. Coming to Inspire. So I've just looked at the Inspire themes which are available. So, and looked what kind of data we are using there. So they are now here highlighted. So mostly this is all data which is really relevant for our digital map, like addresses, I mentioned this before, or administrative units. This is really something we only can get over third parties. There's nothing we can do by our own collection. Hydrography, which is also important have yeah, all rivers, roads, rivers, lakes, and so on inside the net. Of course, transportation networks, because everything is all around navigation. We also use elevation to really modeling a terrain model of our map. So it is not only a 2D map, it also goes 3D. Land cover is also important, and also we are using imagery to, yeah, see the real world and combine it or compare to our map. Then we have in Annex 3, there's also a lot of themes. I can imagine that will be used in the future a lot of more of them, but for the moment, these are the ones where I'm really aware of it. So one important thing, for example, are buildings. Really, yeah, we are getting really good data from the Inspire buildings or from the governmental sources on 2D and also 3D buildings, also level of detail too. So really good usage for modeling 3D cities. Yeah, land use, I mentioned it before in land cover. I think it's in my opinion, nearly the same. And yeah, and also utility and governmental services, where we are getting POIs from about governmental agencies, schools, I don't know, embassy and so on. So everything which is important in the part of yeah, governmental points of interest, and then which then also can be found in our map. I've put together some examples where we can, or I can show it a little bit more detailed how we are using the data. So let's start with addresses. So this is one example from Berlin, where we are using a web feature service, and we have really this web feature service connected to our regular updating of addressing. So each time the city of Berlin is uploading a new data set, we are comparing it with our data we are having, because also we are getting information from other sources, and then we put these updates into our map, also in a regular and also automated process, which is a really good source for this kind of data. And this is not only in Berlin, so we are having a lot of these kind of web feature sets, or sometimes other kinds of APIs, which are really already automated, connected, and we're updating in on a regular basis. Let's say it like this. So the next thing is, which I mentioned before, transportation network. Transportation network is, of course, is the most important part of our map, and this really needs to be up to date, really on a daily basis. So we are also using here Inspire services of transportation networks coming directly from the public sector, which we can really easily detect new road geometry. We can see where new constructions are planned, because I'm not sure if it is in all transportation networks, but in some you have also indicated where new roads are planned. And also, which is highly important, is to have these road numbers really accurate and correct. Because when we do field work, you do not see often the right road number. The road number is not often so easy visible on the streets. So we are using this data directly to put road numbers, and also the classification of the whole network into our map. Next one, land use. We did last year, I think it was last year, a huge project in Spain to update our land use cartography in Spain with the help of the land cover data of Spain. And yeah, it was just really helpful because it's, as far as I saw, and also my colleagues told me, this really a good and detailed source, really up to date, which helped then us a lot to have this polygons really also accurate in our database. Next example, buildings, 3D buildings. We are using this, for example, to have a better visual effect in our 3D map. So here's an example of our application. Here we go, where you can then have a better guidance. So these are level of detail 1, but we are also using level of detail 2 to really model 3D cities, which are then can be used for a lot of use cases, like modeling of emission, for example. So this is already used in some projects. And for this, information coming from Inspire is really, really helpful. But you should not forget that we're always using different kind of sources. This is not only our only source, so we're also getting data from our own collection or from imagery, and then trying to combine all this information. And last but not least, utility and governmental units. So POI data is our fresh POIs, points of interest in maps, is important, because if you search something like a restaurant, a hotel, or a cafe, you need to find it. And most of the sources, commercial sources we can buy, they are mostly concentrated on commercial POIs, like I said, hotels, for example. You can buy really all hotel chains, but to have governmental points of interest, like in this example, embassy or like schools, it's not so easy to get it from a bigger source. So because of this, we are using the geoportals of different countries to update also this kind of information. And this brings me more or less to my conclusion on Inspire and commercial maps. So first of all, it's the data is really an important source. It's not the only source, as I said before, but it's really important to have this data, and it's really a part of our maps. And but what we also saw, the data quality is really different depending on the organization, the country. So we always, or what we are doing with third-party data is we are always doing a source evaluation against a real-world test. So we are looking for an area where we already did a true drive, and then we combine the data with the data quality coming from third party, and then we score it and have a confidence level on how we can use the data. Then another point is access to the data. So sometimes it's not really easy to find, and you need a lot of local knowledge to find the data. So for example, I cannot use a data portal in Portugal because I'm not speaking Portuguese, and it's sometimes not easy to find. So for a company like us, it's always difficult. Because of this, we still have our, or not still, so because of this, we have our local GIS teams, but it's, for example, not too easy to hand it over to a production team sitting elsewhere on the planet or on the Earth. So this is sometimes a tricky part. For the moment, we solve it that the local GIS teams are downloading the data and passing only the data over to the production teams. Then, yeah, that I think Inspire is all about standardization, and this should be clear for the whole audience that standardization is really key. If we know the data format in advance, or the metadata is described really well, for us it's easier to process the data, and then we can process it faster. I think this is more or less clear. Then, yeah, another thing is often we have a lot of isolated data sets. So we have data sets for cities, we have data sets for counties, for states in Germany, for the federal states, for example. But often the data is not available on a country basis, which makes it, yeah, hard to connect all the sources from one country. So we have to go to a lot of municipalities or to a lot of geoportals of municipalities. Sometimes we have to speak directly with the organization providing the data, and so this is yeah, for us a challenge. And also regular updates. So sometimes what we saw in some parts of data is that the data was uploaded once, and also the metadata was uploaded once, and then it wasn't updated anymore. So I recall a case where I tried to call the people who were mentioned in the metadata, and it was nearly impossible to find someone because it was not updated, and that's for us difficult then really to get access to the data. And last point, and I'm always mentioning this is licensing of data. I know that Inspire does not really deal with the licenses of the data, but for us it's often an issue that data is published, but for example, excludes commercial use of data, or the data is just published, but yeah, you're not allowed to incorporate it into products and then redistribute the data. It's not a matter of paying, so we are also willing to pay for data. So this is what we are doing, of course, for example, with address data. It's more a matter of accessibility, access, and also the, yeah, it's, yeah, we need to reuse the data, and this is sometimes not easy. And when you then talk with the organizations providing the data, it's getting often difficult because they are still not set up for this. So they're saying, okay, then we need a bilateral agreement, and it takes a lot of time until we can really use the data. So these are my points. But after, as a conclusion, I would say really important and good source for a lot of different use cases, and also sometimes data which cannot be yeah, accessed by other means. So we are really dependent on the public sector of providing this kind of data, like administrative units or addressing. So that's all from my side. Thank you for your attention. Are we making the questions now? Saurius, or later?
I think we can.
Yes, maybe.
Yeah. Hello, Dominique. Yeah.
I will say yes. I have the question now.
Okay. So now I'll ask the audience, if you have any question, please raise your hand or type your question at the chat window. So far, no one actually has posed any question yet.
Maybe coming later in the discussion.
So I will begin. Dominique, have you tried to download Inspire data from France?
Yes, I think so. I'm not really aware of all countries, so but I know that we are using data from France. Why?
I see. Yeah, I see also Benedict raised a hand, so I activate Benedict's microphone. Please, Benedict, speak.
Yes, hello. My question was about on which metadata you rely to be sure of the update of the dataset you will pick, because you have to build your project based on different data source. And how do you assess the update, the quality of the dataset? Because sometimes metadata are documented and people commit, but sometimes it's not the case.
Yes, this is why we are not only relying on the metadata, we are doing really a source evaluation of the data. We are downloading the data and we are comparing it with our drives and also with other sources we are having to see if the data is actual and if the data is complete.
Do you do it once for all, or every 1 year, for instance, or how do you the quality management of the source?
Runs not every time. So we are building more or less a confidence level of different data sets. So when we have a data set which has a confidence level of 95%, we are saying, okay, this data is reliable, we can trust it, and we also can use further updates easily on this. So, and then when the confidence level is lower, we using the data as an additional information, but not only as the only one source for this kind of product. So it's dependent on the quality itself of the data, and we are doing then also regular checks, but it's not once a year. I think it's half a year, or it depends on the update rate we are getting the data. So it's some data sets are only updated once per year. So then we do again a source evaluation. But when we have data which is updated, let's say every 3 months or every 2 months, then we only do a source evaluation every year. So once we have this confidence level that the data is reliable. Is it clear?
Yes, very clear. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Then we have 2 hands raised. First, Nathalie Delater from Belgium. Please, Nathalie, speak.
Yes, hello, Christian.
Hi,
it's
Nathalie.
really interesting what you are doing with the geographical data sets. I have a question also regarding the quality assessment. I see that it is really crucial for you and that you are providing your own quality control and assessments. My question is, do you provide some report, or do you exchange your information with the data owners so that it can have for improvement?
For the moment, not really. So maybe sometimes when we have a really a good personal contact, then we're exchanging by email or by phone some information, but it's not really institutionalized. So it's on a case by case. So when we have sometimes really not so good quality, or we see structural errors, and we have good contact, it's also depending on the local teams where they have good contacts to the data providers and where they do not have so good contact. So yeah, so that's the case for the moment. I think this can really be improved, but not sure how, because there's no mechanism for it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thanks, Christian. I saw the hand has been raised by Martin, but he removed the hand, so I suppose it was probably the same question as Natalie posed. So I see no more questions. The only was the thank from Eva Pauknerova for the very good insight presentation. I think for the time being, we can probably move to Dominique's presentation. If anyone has any outstanding question, then we can return after Dominique's presentation. So I'm passing the screen to Dominique.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christian.
Yes.
So we see your screen, Dominique, so you can start.
Yes, so perfect. So I will thank also Christian for this extra presentation. That is a very good introduction to mine. So the webinar about use of InSpy data. Also, good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending this webinar. Is it working? Yes. So the purpose of this webinar was to provide the context and the main learnings from the previous workshop. The full name of this workshop was Use of InSpy Data, Past Experiences and Scenarios for the Future. It took place in Warsaw by end of November, and it was co-organized by InSpyCan of Eurogeographic and EuroSDR that makes the bridge between research and national mapping agencies, national mapping and cadastral agencies. So the main purpose of this webinar is, of course, to provide an opportunity for those who could not come, but of course, others are quite welcome. I have seen among you some who also attended the workshop, and probably at the end of my presentation, you might complete what I have said, because probably I will have forgotten some significant points. And it may be also a first stage to initiate discussion on potential action to improve the things. So the plan of my presentation, I will present first the workshop context and objectives. The workshop was organized with a different program according to the 2 days. The first day was devoted to the drivers, who are the current and potential users and use case. So I will provide the main learnings from this first day. The second day was about the barriers and how to remove them, what makes the use of InSpy data may be difficult, and then some general conclusions. So what about the workshop context and objectives? The context it's something that was asked from a long time from the InSpyCan community. When we ask people what are the topics for new events, use of InSpy data came very often again and again. In fact, the benefits of InSpy are generally widely recognized regarding discovery, services, data sharing, spatial data infrastructure in general, but there were some doubts about interoperability, with the feeling that there is very limited use of InSpy interoperable data, and I'm sure that lots of you have often, as me, heard sentences such as national users like national products, they don't need InSpy. InSpy models are too complex. No GIS can consume InSpy data. Even the European Commission is not so keen to use InSpy data, and so on. So it's why we decided to have this workshop. Some reminder, we had nevertheless some small events related to the topic. We had at the beginning in 2013 a workshop about the strategy to implement InSpy interoperability, and there was a session about expected benefits and so also about users and use cases. We had also a webinar about how to make InSpy useful, that was held in December 2015. And we had in June 2017 a workshop about extending profiling InSpy data models. That is also linked to interoperability. It's more linked to the benefits of InSpy data models, but nevertheless linked to interoperability. So the objectives, the workshop was organized with two different topics according to the days. The first objective was to better understand which are the main drivers. So the first day was devoted to users and use cases. And the second day was devoted more to the barriers, what prevents users to use InSpy data, what are these barriers, and how can we remove them. So it was, the second day was really devoted about technical issues and existing and potential solutions, what are their state of play. And also, of course, the point is to identify what can be done to improve the current situation. It's why we had also discussion sessions. It was not just to complain that we don't have enough users, but to see what we can do to have more. So the workshop agenda, the first day morning was devoted to European examples. We had a presentation from Eurogeographic about pan-European services and OpenELS. We had also a presentation from Eurostat, and we had a presentation more devoted to coverage data. In the second part, it was more about more specific application. We had the first presentation from Christian Kleiner that you have heard a few minutes ago about car navigation, something also from automatic driving, and a presentation from Benedict about a project on human climate studies. And what I have highlighted in red, it was a presentation about some state of play of users and use cases, mainly collected in other events such as the InSpy conference. So in the conclusion, you will see not only users and use case from the workshop, but also collected from other events, mainly the last year InSpy conference. The Thursday afternoon was devoted to national examples, and I should confess that I was rather happy to have, I think, 9 of them, because I was really afraid to have nothing to fill the agenda, and it seems there are some people having something to report about it, so it was already good news. And we had a discussion session about who is needed in InSpy data, who are the potential users, how do we promote our InSpy data, factors of success and failures. The second day, it was about the barriers, the technical issues. So we had the first pair of a presentation about finding, harvesting InSpy data, with the experience of Copernicus harvesting InSpy data, and also the new ELS architecture by Solus. Then we had a lot of presentation about dealing with InSpy complexity, some presentation from Germany explaining where this complexity is, what are the cause of complexity. And then we had some proposal for solutions. So several presentations dealing about data simplification, flattening, alternative encodings, and so on. And the other solution, of course, is to have better client applications. And there were a short video by BRGM and some testing of client application by Norway. In the second day, in the afternoon, we had some last session that was, I will say, more open to anything that can improve the situation, better data, better tools, better laws. So it was more maybe the future research part of the meeting. And we had a discussion session about how to remove these barriers and some conclusions. Regarding the attendance, there were around 40 persons attending and contributing to the workshop from data producers, mainly NMCAs, but not only, from research, from European Commission. We had EEA and Eurostat, and from private sector also, as Christian. We had 2 very busy days with lots of presentations and interested people attending them, listening to them. But we benefited also from the warm hospitality and the excellent logistics provided by Gugic, and I would like to profit also from this webinar to thank again Gugic for really the very good logistics provided to this workshop. The workshop outcomes, there are the PowerPoint presentation, the video recordings, and the minutes. In the minutes, there is a short description of each presentation and more detailed about the discussion session. So maybe if you are interested, you can begin by the minutes, and it may help you to select the presentation that look of more interest for you if you are not willing to scan every presentation. But of course, I really invite you to visit the Eurogeographic website, because it was a very rich workshop, and I will present the main conclusion, but of course not everything, and I really invite you also to consult the website. So the first part about drivers, who are the current and potential users and use cases. If we look at the use cases, there are use cases at different levels. It may be national use. Regarding national use, we had 2 main examples. The first one, INSPI data is used because it's mandatory by law. It's an example coming from Spain, where the INSPI GML is used as exchange format between the cadastre and land registry in Spain, or something looking like land registry. I'm not sure it's the right word, but in the land registration system, in the land administration system, they use INSPI data for exchange for SIM cadastral parcel and buildings. And it may be also mandatory because there is no alternative data. And I understood it was the case in Czech Republic for SIM administrative unit, because in fact they produced this product around 2012, when it was mandatory to have INSPI for new products very soon. So they decided just to deliver INSPI through, they decided to deliver address data only through INSPI data, not providing any alternative format. But the general feeling is that in general, the use of INSPI data at national level is rather limited. There are cross-border use cases, for instance, for cartography. I know that in IGN we are very interested to use the health base map that was done from INSPI data for our neighbor countries to have something homogeneous. for accessibility assessment, and it's something that is very trendy because it's a requirement from the Sustainable Development Goal of the of the United Nations. And there is an example in the illustration. It came from the INSPIRE conference from Netherlands. And if you see the map with this region of Netherlands that is really surrounded by Belgium, France, and Germany, you understand that it's really necessary to have data from the neighbor countries to make something meaningful regarding these accessibility studies and computation. We had the examples of the common agricultural policy subsidies for cross-border farmers. We had examples also from planning. There was an example on land from Alpine Convention that was mentioned, and we had also a presentation about planning on sea coming from Baltic Lines. And there is also a very generic use case that is just to have a multi-purpose database for everyday life. We had examples from Switzerland, from Bodensee, Geneva, where they have this kind of requirements. We have some pan-European use case. What I have really called pan-European use case is when there is the need for a whole European coverage, and it's mainly the European Commission and associated EEA that need this kind of data as source data for the products, nuts, choline. For instance, they were mentioned as use of Euroboundary map that was used for this kind of product, Copernicus services, the GISCO database of Eurostat, for geocoding services, for European statistics. Once again, there was accessibility example, but coming from DG Regio, so they were really interested to have data everywhere in Europe. Another category is those who are potentially pan-European use, and I will say even world use. For instance, it's about researchers. We had the very interesting example of the Urban Climate Project. It's a project on several European cities, and they have interest for standardized data to make their model work everywhere in each city. So they use both atmospheric data and Earth surface data. They have some kind of model, canopy model, and from which they can derive climate data to assess. I think it's aimed to the hot islands in cities, in urban areas. And for them, the INSPIRE data on building will be of big interest among the Earth surface data. But in fact, the researchers in meteorology are not aware at all of INSPIRE. They are only aware of OpenStreetMap and willing to use OpenStreetMap. But the first point is they were not even aware of INSPIRE. So clearly, for this kind of application, there is need for reproducible results among space and also among time, because climate is a long time phenomena. Among the potentially pan-European use, there are also the application developers, and there were several examples provided first during the workshops, such as the car navigation by ear, but also during the INSPIRE conference, such as estimated the solar potential of roofs, impact of wind turbines, energy consumption of buildings. And there was also something more original in games. There was a presentation about EcoCraft. It's a game where the INSPIRE data is used to make the representation of the city, and children may play choosing different ways to improve the energy of buildings by isolation, by wind turbines, or by solar panels, and see how much it costs and what are the benefits. So it's an educative game constructed from Inspire data. At the moment, I think it was Netherlands and Poland, but potentially it can be done in whole Europe or even wider. If we look at the potential users, of course, it's quite crossing the previous slide. We have official global or European key players such as United Nations, World Bank, European Commission, EEA, Eurostat. They are the users that provide data credibility. There are the private companies, big companies in transport sector such as HERE, startup, for instance, in France, we have Inson Witreux that will be very interested by Inspire data in Europe. So the applications they have developed for France can be reused with limited adaptation in other countries. IT companies that are seen generally as intermediate actors, resellers, so generally application developers. Other potential users, NMCA themselves for the cross-border cartography, as I already mentioned it, transport and utility managers, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, State Forest Administration. The three last examples provide from an event that was held in Poland. It was about health data, and they were the people present in the room, in the meeting room, to learn about health and Inspire data. So maybe if they were interested in Poland, they may be interested in other countries also. And as we have already said, cross-border organization or initiatives such as the Geneva area, Bodensee area, or the Grande Région that is composed of Luxembourg and some part of Belgium, Germany and France. And of course, research, universities, the academic sector. However, something I would like also to report is that the benefits of interoperability, it's not only the use of Inspire data, but there is also the use of Inspire data models that are a good basis for national or cross-border standards. For instance, Inspire is something seen as a magic word to get consensus between various stakeholders, especially, for instance, in where there are different regions, such as in Spain, and it's easier to have agreement about European standards and about a national one. And it was also mentioned several times that it was easy to get a consensus when there is a European standard. And there were the examples from Spain with the GML exchange format, but also the production of transport data that was presented during the workshop. And of course, we had also lots of other examples from our previous workshop 2 years ago. In fact, when there is a new national product, generally Inspire is taken into account in a way or another. It's also taken into account in lots of European projects. It's also used in some ontologies, and one of the benefits that was mentioned is that, in fact, lots of data are expected to be attached to Inspire-based ontologies. Of course, people who are working in the semantic web, generally it's about use already known ontologies that are shared by many people, but Inspire, even if they are a little new, they have the advantage that there is this guarantee that there will be lots of data attached to the ontology. It's not just an ontology, but it's also an ontology coming with attached data. There were some examples. There was a presentation during the Inspire conference about artificial intelligence, where they tried to use the Inspire code list For ontologies, it was more about land use, geology, mineral resources. And we had also some contact for the workshop, someone who unfortunately could not come, but who explained us the topic. It was about European Standard Organization in telecommunication, and they wanted, it was about smart cities, and they wanted also to make development, but interoperability was weak because everyone was using his own data model, and it's why also they were interested by this InSpy data models that could be used as ontologies. Of course, these benefits of data models are very various, because sometimes it's just some, I will say, InSpy flavor. Sometimes it's big slice of InSpy, and sometimes I will say it's when it's really formal extension of InSpy data models, it's really InSpy data. So it's more or less InSpy data, but it's coming. Okay, I think I have forgotten something, but we'll see. So among the discussion topics, we had, is there any need for InSpy data? It was a discussion topic, and in fact, in the coordination committee, we had some discussion about how we should name this session. Should it be for InSpy data, for harmonized data, for interoperable data? And in what came out from the discussion session is that they're not so interested by InSpy data by itself, but what they want is something easy to access and standardized. So it was not so much about harmonized, interoperable, or InSpy. The word that came out was standardization. But of course, these characteristics are very close to InSpy principles. So what is meant by standardized? It's something that is well documented. It was also mentioned several times that it's one of the benefits of InSpy, good documentation. There was an example, for instance, during the InSpy conference from Croatia. They had transformed their data about land use, saying InSpy data is not as rich as national one, but it's better documented. So maybe there may be some national users. And of course, it's reproducible across Europe. It's what was the main benefit that was expected from interoperability, but also reproducible across time. And sustainability was also something required several times by users. Regarding the standard itself, of course, it may be InSpy, but it may be something else. There were interest for pan-European products such Euroboundary map, Euroglobal map, Euroregional map, CityGML, the new core reference data by Eurogeographic, but also we have competitors. There is also OpenStreetMap that may be seen as such kind of European standard. Regarding the discussion topic, do we know our potential users? I am still online?
Yes, you are.
Yes, okay. Yes, I was hearing something strange. So generally, in NMCA, we have good knowledge of national users, but of course, these national users are not the main target for InSpy. And in general, it seems that there is limited prospection for InSpy users. For instance, to the question, do we know data users? How do we know them? We don't know end users. We serve open data, so we cannot know who use these services. And some proposal for knowing better the users, probably end users are not so much important. We should concentrate more on users in the middle, on these intermediate actors, resellers, application developers. There were some research done for national SDI using the IP address and discovering new type of users. Someone saying surveys should be a good way, integrate more users in the data processing. On the other hand, are the potential InSpy users aware of InSpy? And the answer is not so much. We had the examples of the urban climate project where the meteorologists, researchers were not aware at all of InSpy. And we had also the example of this European standard organization interested in using the InSpy data models for ontologies, and they had found InSpy model more or less by hazard, by chance, and they had lots of questions about them, not knowing really what was in, what was out. So we ask also the question, what do you do to promote your InSpy data? On the negative side, the general answer was almost nothing. Sometimes we are rather hiding our InSpy data than promoting them. We don't advertise so much InSpy, but mainly our national geoportal. We are even, some producers are even reluctant to have their web feature service used because it takes capacity and might break down the system. So not big promotion, but however, some ideas nevertheless. User training. Some countries provide this user training either through meetings, but also through online courses. But generally, it's mainly about use of SDI and not so much about use of InSpy data. Training staff in contact with users, documentation in national language. We have built a community of InSpy users, and we can get feedback and react on it. Meeting with public agencies. We try to find some best practice and use case. Something that I found very interesting. We try to keep informed about cross-border projects and to make adapted communication. We keep our users informed when we publish a new version of data. So something, and maybe by mixing all what we have done in various countries, we can have more ideas. So the second day was about the barriers, how to remove them. So the main barriers, first one is at discovery level. It's what I have said, are potential users aware of InSpy data? Not enough. And we, on our side, we don't really know who are the users. We don't make very much awareness raising by data producers. In general, InSpy data is not proudly advertised by NMCAs, so probably there is big place for improvement. Among the barriers, the physical access, the download services. So is it easy to harvest InSpy data? Not really. There are issues with web feature service. To download big volume of data, and big is not so big. If it's not small, it becomes difficult. Needs for products rather than services. Complaints also about fully distributed architecture. And something it's, I won't say it's totally new, but it's something that we have discovered rather recently because web feature service and distributed architecture have been promoted and widely adopted for InSpy. For instance, it was what we were supposed to do in the health project. So it's something we have discovered the issues after implementing the solution. The access, there was also complaints about licensing. Is it easy to understand access conditions to InSpy data? Not enough according to users. I have put an extract of the EA presentation, licensing, licensing, licensing. And you have here the same from Christian from here. So some potential solutions, of course, opening the data, but at least use of standardized licenses. the use, of course. Is it possible, easy to use InSpy data? We know from the beginning the difficulties. The InSpy model are considered as complex and that not all client applications are able to consume InSpy data. However, I will say from the workshop, we had some reports about some success. For instance, during the health event in Poland, the workshop attendants were asked to make an exercise to integrate InSpy data and to make an application with it, and it worked. There are some use of check InSpy services, even if this use is quite smaller than the use of national data, it exists, it's not zero. There have been tools developed in Spain to deal with the InSpy GML and cadastral parcel, as it is something mandatory, the tools have come. And we had the integration exercise for Copernicus services and administrative unit. Of course, they have met issues, but they succeeded. So it was also some positive message saying maybe it's not so easy, but at least it's feasible. In the next slide, I will focus on some specific user complaints when requirements are not fully met by InSpy data and put the potential solution. Some were discussed during the work, explicitly discussed during the workshop, and some are coming from my own, but just because they look logical, it's not very original. So I've made this difference in colors. So one of the main complaints was about availability. The whole European coverage is required by pan-European users, EEA, Eurostat. We need pan-European dataset, Eurostat. EEA complaining when we made the integration exercise, there were only 20 countries available. And you can see the one missing. So what will be the solution? First, we have to see what is the issue. Of course, the first issue is maybe that data is available but not findable. I know that several of us, we have transformed our data, we have set up the services, we think that everything is fine, but our data is not seen on the thematic viewer of, in the GeoPortal. So it's about solving the remaining technical issues. I think it's something ongoing between MIG, data producers. Then it may be also that the annex, the data is not available. So I have made a difference between Annex 1 and Annex 2 and 3. Of course, the first thing is the data is not available. For Annex 1, the deadline is over, and it will be to push the member states to comply with InSpy. In fact, they comply to us, but it's the role of the European Commission to ensure that everyone complies with InSpy obligations. It was something that was reproached to us by EEA, but we have no power to push our other countries or other data providers to do things. In fact, the responsibility should be rather on European Commission than on NMCAs. There was also something that was proposed. It was to make a patchwork product with InSpy and third-party data. If InSpy data is not available everywhere, for instance, for the Corinne land cover backbone, it could have been a solution for this ancillary data about transport and hydrography network. And something also that was mentioned during the workshop, some doubt about the availability of data from Annex 2 and 3, because it seems that only few countries have really seriously begun to implement these annexes, and there are 25 remaining themes, and we are just now 2 years from the deadline, so it looks unlikely that there will be lots of data available for Annexes 2 and 3. So maybe it's to be considered in the reflection about the future of InSpy. So, very common user complaint was also the easy access to data. People, for instance, EA was complaining about the variety and the limits of download services. There are different ways of downloading, for instance, FTP, Atom, direct link, even emails. So it was a difficulty for them. They have also to go through the authentication services. We had also the wish of Eurostat, saying that most of the requirements cannot be met in a distributed architecture, such as edge matching, generalization. So they were not really interested in making the puzzle from national or regional InSpy contribution. So how to solve it? The first issue that was mentioned is the variety and the limits of download services. I will profit from this webinar to advertise our next event. InSpy10 has decided to organize a workshop about download services in October. So, of course, a workshop is not solving all the issues, but at least we might share our experiences, make state of play of what is going on regarding download services. And the main issue, of course, is it's hard work for users to integrate InSpy datasets. First, because there are too many datasets to be harvested. So one solution is to increase the coordination between data producers and have consolidated datasets at national level. Something going on in the MIG is the idea to document the national and regional datasets through additional metadata elements. The other topic of difficulties was this distributed architecture, and there were some solutions that were proposed. There was a presentation about the new ELS architecture and showing what has done as prototyping it to have something more centralized. And there is also the experience of Eurogeographic, of CRD, of core reference dataset, when they harvest the national InSpy contribution for making a pan-European product. Some complaints, as said previously, the use. The complex InSpy model not easily usable in GIS, not everyone familiar with GML. There was complaint, for instance, from the accessibility assessment in Netherlands. Harmonized complex features generally don't work in GIS. There were complaints also in the marine spatial planning. There was a presentation during this workshop seeing simple encoding with simple data content, users as planners. We don't need complex models with contact points and things like this. And for them, even the view service and the portrayal rules were already useful. So they had limited demands regarding interoperability, something simple to use. So I will say for vector data, we know that complex InSpy data are not usable by client application, and the solutions they were in our agenda improve client application. We had this presentation by BRGM about the plugin for QGIS. We have a presentation about testing client application by Norway, but the conclusion were not so nice. Of course, it's feasible, but it was feasible with lots of difficulties and not with any client application, only some of them. And the other possibility is a simplification of InSpy through alternative encodings or simplified or flattened schemas. And probably all of you, know, it's something ongoing in the MIG, in the maintenance and implementation group. From the last news, there has been a decision to try to make prototype on some themes with GeoJSON and simplified data models on some themes such as address, area management, and I don't remember everything, observation and measures, I think. There is the experience of the core reference dataset for Eurogeographic, when they use a flattened and simplified data model for theme transport and hydrography. There is also the experience of UN-GGIM Europe core data, when there is also the selection of what should be the core content, so some simplification generally of INSPI. Regarding coverage, it's something a little bit different because there are good tools for extracting and combining coverage data. It's the web coverage processing services. However, some remaining issues, some discrepancies between INSPI data models and coverage standards. Of course, it should be up to the MIG to remove them. And of course, also lack of user experience. First, because there is lack of data. So there was some incitation to say provide coverage data. Of course, NMCAs for theme elevation or ortho image, but also statistical data from Eurostat or maybe national statistical agencies. It could be useful to be combined with environmental data. And user training, capacity building to learn users how to use this web coverage data and the web coverage services. There has been also some user complaints about data quality. For instance, EEA pointing out some big errors such as missing features in some INSPI data. And Eurostat saying we need pan-European dataset that are edge match, that are comparable, for instance, with the same level of detail. You can see in the illustration the different density of road between two neighbor countries. So, regarding the data quality, what could be done? The first thing, of course, is to keep the quality of source data in INSPI. So probably validate INSPI against source data, not just check INSPI conformity, but check if nothing has been lost in the transformation process that may be complex. It was something that was proposed. And there were also these complaints that INSPI data is not harmonized enough, and there were more or less the same solutions as for the simplification. Ensure minimum common content from the UN-GGIM Europe Core Data Initiative. Make European product, ensure edge matching from the core reference dataset of Eurogeographic. Reach the harmonization degrees defined by the health project. Common core content, homogeneous level of detail, common data models, edge matching, geometry harmonization, all these things to have better data, more suitable for users. Some theme-specific difficulties. For transport, there are interested users, such as for car navigation, but linear referencing is considered as too complex for basic application. And also the fact that NMCAs are not always responsible for this theme, and it makes issues for building pan-European dataset or pan-European coverage for Eurogeographic. What was mentioned also is themes with generic data models, such as area management, observation and measures, oceanography. It was mentioned by the Baltic Lines presentation. It's difficult to find relevant information because the relevant information is just a value in a code list, a variable, and it makes it quite complex. So they were proposing to have a layer for each value of the code list. Some conclusions. As the workshop was co-organized by EuroSDR and Eurogeographic, the conclusions from EuroSDR prepared by Benedict about what looks the most important, the idea of clarifying a missing brokering process on the European SDI, which solution to bridge the gap between some user needs for specific application and multi-source workflows that should use the most appropriate national data available. Yes, how to get from Inspire contribution or maybe third-party contribution into something of European, pan-European product, suitable for specific application or even in general. The question of licenses that was seen as a key issue, and also the more or less a proposal that the scientific community may help to solve our problem, about use of Inspire data. EuroSDR has the idea to design one-year challenges based on NMCA details about schema alignment, QGIS plugin to connect national data that might connect to national data portals, work about data interconnection, comparison, connection our portals with the web content of Wikidata, place-oriented models for gazetteers, improvement in geographical names, generating multilingual data cards, dealing with linear coordinates and geographical coordinates, have smoother transformation between these two systems of coordinates, work about data on theme building, about segmentation, identification, in order to gather better content on it, and so on. So this, it's more or less an offer of the scientific community that could help to solve some of these difficulties. Regarding the point of view of InspireCan, I have tried to make some comparison with our previous event. So the workshop that we hold in 2013 about our strategy to implement Inspire interoperability, what we said and what is the situation now. So what we said is users and use case will come when a critical mass of data is available. What is the situation now? The critical mass of data is more or less here for Annex 1, and users and use case are coming, but rather slowly. What we said, real benefit will come in long term with Annex 3 data available and interoperable. There will have more application, more use of Annex 1 and 2 data. And I will say we are still very far from this target because it's still long term. Annex 3 data is far from being interoperable. What we said, Inspire is just the first step toward interoperability. It's not a product, just an exchange structure. And users-oriented application are needed. They should build on Inspire data. We need VAR, resellers, health project to improve the situation. And these initiatives have come, of course, there has been the health project. Now there is a core reference data set. But however, we have still a limited number of end-user applications. What we said also, Inspire specification are best practice and may be integrated, taken into account into data producers' internal specification. It will improve data quality for users. And I will say this is rather the case. The Inspire data models have been widely taken into account for new products, standard projects. So maybe there is not wide use of pure Inspire data, but a lot of inspired data. And to finish, regarding the webinar about how to make Inspire useful, one of the main conclusions was that Inspire gives us international approved standards and data in a common language. And I think that the benefit of standardized data have been widely recognized by users during the workshop in Warsaw. And for the end, to have some fun, it's a presentation I used to present the health project to my colleague in IGN, where the data producer is seen as this nice donkey. willing to reach the INSPIRE target because it will make its data used at European levels. However, this Proudhon has some technical difficulties, and we had a lot in health to transform our data, to set up our services, to make validation. But he has no choice because there is a stick. There was the INSPIRE stick, that is a legal obligation, and we had the health stick with contract commitment. But we had also the carrot because we make some progress and make our service widely used. And we had also our work package leader encouraging us and pushing us to make some progress in implementing INSPIRE. And now if we make the comparison with the data user, so the data user has also technical difficulties. And maybe the difficulties are even bigger than for us because they don't have all the professional skills to do it and the will to do it. Because for them, INSPIRE is not a target. It was said during the workshop, INSPIRE is just a mean. It's not a purpose. In general, they have no obligation. INSPIRE, except in Spain, but it was the only example we connected. And in a way, there are not so much people pushing to use them. We have seen very limited promotion of our data. So that's the point. Of course, if we want to make our data more widely used, we have to make the carrot bigger by improving our data or by making the barriers smaller by decreasing the difficulties in using INSPIRE data. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dominique. Now I am looking for any outstanding question, and please, if anyone wants to raise a question, raise your hand. In the meanwhile, I like to read the comments from Eva Pauknerova, which wrote it in the chat window. So the first was the clarification to you, Dominique, about the address data in Czech Republic, so which is produced by the base registry of territorial identification addresses and real estate. And it was commented that the address data is widely used, and probably INSPIRE address data is more widely used than other themes. Then regarding the INSPIRE users, Eva commented that INSPIRE has pushed on broader a usage of standardized metadata and web mapping services. It improved the coordination, according to Eva, and the INSPIRE harmonization and web feature services are still a challenge, but the results are coming slowly, step by step. So she's more positive about the good impact of the INSPIRE to the community. Okay, I don't see any raised hand now. So it seems that
maybe,
yeah.
Yes, maybe I know some of the webinar attendants have also attended the workshop, so if they are willing to complete my presentation, because I have presented something that is in a way a little bit subjective, it's my point of view, or I may have forgotten significant topics, so I would like also to invite those who attended the workshop to complete my presentation if needed.
Okay, thank you. I think maybe the time also works to the attendees, because it is always a challenge to keep attention for the long time in webinars. So I encourage everyone actually comment to Dominique if you have some comments or have some additions to Dominique's slides. In the meanwhile, I think we had a very good overview, and I would say it's rather the open till many discussion points that would need to be discussed later, probably next event. But now I see Benedict raised her hand. I activate Dominic's microphone. Please, Benedict, speak.
Yes, thank you. So I'd like to thank Dominique for the great work to summarize all the exchange. And then, so it's just to make some precision regarding the license, because there is the notion of open data that is very, very important, especially in research. And what we noticed in our project on urban climate zones is that researchers are looking for open data. And for them, open data, it's OpenStreetMap data. And with other people, OpenStreetMap, since the license is ODBL, they say it's not open. And for instance, you should not merge them with IGN data. And I was then, so the question is that if there is this new PSI directive that say that all our data should be open data, maybe it could be also the opportunity to clarify what do we mean by open and what are the license, because what I see is that OpenStreetMap is quite funded by European Commission, since people get money to work with OpenStreetMap data, and so to produce also new OpenStreetMap data. And when you have a research project funding, usually you commit that the resulting data and so will be made available as open data. So I think that there may be here some room for clarification. And for example, at IGN, depending on the colleague I talk to, for some they say ODBL, it's really an issue because it's not a good license. And for others, they say actually ODBL, it's the only good open license because you ensure that the resulting data will be open with ODBL too. And personally, I don't know who is right, but I think it's something that should be decided at the level of European Commission. And maybe it's important that we push the right questions to people there. So that was all I wanted to add about this licensing topic.
Yes, thanks, Benedict, for this remark.
And okay, also one last point is that we will be writing the EuroSDR report. So it's something that is written after the minutes, but it will look more like a Dominique presentation, because we need to have something that is that can be read easily by people who did not attend the meeting, and also by people who sometimes do not know that much Inspire. And on this report that we want to make publicly available on EuroSDR website, it could be also the opportunity to make a summary of what we all think about this and what are important topics when we talk about the use of Inspire data.
Thank you, Benedict. And also I would encourage that if any of the audience has any discussion points or objections or additional comments to the conclusions that Dominique made, you can also use the Basecamp of Inspire Knowledge Exchange Network, and we can stimulate discussions there. In the meanwhile, I think we had very good webinar. So and if anyone will be looking for more details, please get connection with the record of it. And for the time being, I see no more hands raised, so I like to close the webinar. So before doing so, big thanks to both presenters. It was very interesting to hear what you explained. So I think I share just opinion of all audience. Thank you, and have a nice day for everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Saulius. It was a pleasure, and thank you.